Welcome to another episode of the Diary of a Trainer. Today we are going down the history road and look at some of the memorable persons that made this city. And today we zero in at a gentleman called Ofafa. When you walk through Nairobi's Eastlands, past Jericho, Maringo, and Jerusalem, or the iconic Ofafa Jericho High School, few pause to ask, who was Ofafa? His name graces some of the oldest African estates in Nairobi. Yet his story is one of quiet service, civic reform, and tragic sacrifice during one of Kenya's most turbulent chapters. Ambrose Michael Ofafa was among the earliest African civil servants to rise through the colonial and administrative ranks in Nairobi in the 1940s and early 1950s. Born in the early 1900s in the Luo community, Ofafa came of age when the education was both rare and revolutionary for Africa. He was part of the pioneering generation that believed progress would come through discipline, service, education, and engagement rather than confrontation with the colonial system. Ofafa worked his way up the ranks of the municipal administration. At the time when African representation in public affairs was virtually non existent. By the late 1940s, he had become one of the few Africans serving the Nairobi Municipal Council, a historic achievement that placed him at the center of a growing debate over African urban rights, land allocation, and fair access to city service. As a council member, Ofafa became a respected voice of Nairobi's African residents who were often confined to overcrowded and underdeveloped areas like Pumwani, Shaurimoyo, and Makandala. He fought for better housing, healthcare, and schools for Africans who were excluded from European and Asian residential zones by rigid colonial segregation rules. He believed that Africans deserved dignified living conditions in the rapidly growing capital. His advocacy was instrumental in laying the groundwork for post-war African housing schemes, the very initiatives that would later produce estates like Ofafa Maringo, Ofafa Jericho, and Ofafa Jerusalem. Unlike many activists of the time, Ofafa was not a fiery nationalist, but a pragmatic reformer. He believed that steady negotiations and civic participation could open opportunities for Africans within the colonial order. Yet, this position would prove perilous during the politically charged Mau Mau era. By the early 1950s, Kenya had become a country in turmoil. The Mau Mau uprising had erupted in the Central Highlands, and the colonial state responded with extreme brutality. In this climate of fear and suspicion, moderate African leaders like Ambrose Ofafa were often distrusted by the both sides. In November of 1953, tragedy struck. While traveling near Nairobi Ambrose Ofafa was ambushed, shot, and killed in mysterious circumstances. His murder shocked the country. To some, he had been a bridge builder, a man working to uplift Africans within the system. To others, he was a symbol of compromise in a time demanding radical change. The truth of his death remains uncertain to this day. Some claimed Mau Mau sympathizers targeted him for cooperating with the colonial authorities. Others whispered that his growing influence had unsettled powerful interests who preferred the status quo. Whatever the motive of Fafa's death, marked the silencing of one of the most level-headed African voices of his generation. In recognition of his civic service and leadership, the colonial administration named a series of new African housing schemes in Nairobi after him. Ofafa Maringo, Ofafa Jerusalem, and Ofafa Jericho. It must also be remembered that the community association raised funds and built an Ofafa Memorial Hall in Kisumu. These estates were part of the post-war African housing development program aimed at decongesting Pumwani and providing organized, affordable housing for African families. The Ofafa Jericho High School, established later, carried forward his legacy of education and community empowerment. Built to serve children from Eastlands, it became one of the leading boys' schools in Nairobi, producing generations of professionals, artists, and leaders. Each of our estate was designed with a sense of community, communal courtyards, schools, churches, and playing fields, embodying the urban vision that Ambrose Ofafa had long advocated. In many ways, they became a living memorial to his dream of dignified African urban life. Today, the Ofafa estate stand as a reminder of Nairobi's complex colonial history, a time when urban planning was not just about infrastructure, but also about identity, class, and belonging. Eastlands became a cradle of African urban culture, from football clubs to music and political movement. While many Nairobians associate Ofafa simply with a place, very few realize that it represents one of the earliest tributes to an African reformer whose vision was way ahead of his time. Ambrose Ofafa's story is intertwined with that of Nairobi city itself, a story of ambition, resilience, and the enduring struggle for dignity in the city's African quarter. Ambrose Ofafa's legacy remains understated, yet deeply embedded in the city's fabric. His life reminds us that not all heroes of Kenya's independence era carried rifles. Some carried pens, municipal files, and the quiet conviction that Africans could indeed govern themselves through discipline, service, and unity. Every child walking to class in Ofafa Jericho High School and every family living in one of the Ofafa estates They unknowingly continue the story of a man who helped lay the foundations of modern African Nairobi. One act of civil service at a time, the legacy lives on. Thank you. If you liked our stories and if you want us to cover any other story, please comment in the comment section. And thank you for watching. See you in the next.